Hello everyone, in this video, I'll be translating and summarizing the latest Urdu broadcast by Moeed Pirzada to make it accessible for our English-speaking audience. Let's go through the key developments and insights in Moeed Pirzada's words. There are many developments in front of me which are related to the politics of Pakistan, the power dynamics between Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, Islamabad and Rawalpindi. These developments are related to the situation in the Middle East and Afghanistan-Pakistan dynamics. There is also a brief mention of India. Many of you might expect me to talk about the protests on October 18th in the United States, as mentioned in the news, that in 2,700 cities, protests against Donald Trump occurred, with 7 million people participating. The No King movement, saying we do not want a king, is also something I would have analyzed. However, I will not present that analysis here. The reason is that until I arrived in the United States, I did not fully understand the internal dynamics here, and sharing my understanding of these dynamics in a vlog or in just a few minutes is impossible. What I will say is that from all the comments I have seen, especially from Pakistanis, both within the United States and outside, most have no clue about the political dynamics inside the US. Many believe that after the midterm elections, things will change. As you can see in many comments, whether on Twitter or in newspapers, people think that everything happening is connected to Donald Trump's decision-making, and that if he is removed or loses the election, the situation in the US will change. But that's not the reality. If you remember, before the elections, I said that after the US elections, there would be a major internal struggle between two sides. What would be the result? What is the significance of this battle? Who wins? The impact of this battle will not only affect the US, but the entire world. I will try to discuss this further with some experts in my vlogs, but right now, I am not discussing it. Right now, the main question in front of me is about Pakistan's provinces and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa's newly elected chief minister, Mr. Sohail Afridi, who seemingly has the help of an intelligent bureaucracy. He wants to do better work for Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, Pakistan and Pakistan-Afghanistan relations. It appears he wants to do this, but will Pakistan's powerful figures, such as Chaudhry Nizamuddin, who are some of the most intelligent and strategic minds in Pakistan's military, allow him to deliver, or will they stop him? This is the central question I have right now. However, instead of answering it directly, I want you all to come to your own conclusion. To help you get there, I will first present two examples to you. These are the stories of two ceasefires. One is the ceasefire between Hamas and Israel over Gaza on October 10th. The other was a ceasefire brokered just 2 days ago by Qatar and Turkey between Pakistan and the Afghan Taliban, which Pakistan's Defense Minister, Khawaja Asif, made numerous statements about in the last 24 hours and gave interviews on multiple television channels. Now, the answers to these questions about Mr. Sohail Afridi's future are, well, embedded in the answers to these two ceasefire stories. Let's begin by discussing the first one, the ceasefire between Israel, Palestine, Hamas and Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, which took place on October 10th. As a result, you saw that 20 Israeli hostages who had been held by Hamas were released in a joyful manner, eating well, smiling. It seemed like a successful PR exercise by Hamas, where the Israeli hostages, upon release, embraced their Hamas captors who were wearing uniforms and carrying weapons, with faces covered by masks. This PR exercise by Hamas worked well. On the other hand, what happened was that there were reports of Palestinians being released from Israeli prisons, but their condition was horrific. Their eyes were gouged out, their bodies covered in marks from torture, indicating that they had not been fed properly and were in terrible physical and mental states. But the story didn't end there. In the last 24 to 48 hours, Gaza's health authorities reported that 97 Palestinians were killed in different Israeli airstrikes involving Israel's air force, tanks, and artillery. The situation continues to escalate, with further casualties being reported. Israel's response has been to claim that Hamas violated the ceasefire, with Prime Minister Netanyahu himself confirming that Israeli military operations were necessary and that the hostages have not been fully returned. The release of hostages from Hamas is ongoing, with 12 of the 28 hostages confirmed to have been returned, but Israel is calling for the rest to be quickly released. Hamas, on the other hand, says they are buried under rubble, and to retrieve them, heavy equipment is required, which they currently do not have. Israel's military has drawn a yellow line inside Gaza, claiming that Hamas has violated this line. Palestinians, however, argue that they were not even aware of this line, as they were not provided with clear maps and markings. In some places, Israel has started drawing yellow pillars to mark this line. Israel also claimed that Hamas fired at Israeli soldiers in Rafah, resulting in the deaths of 2 Israeli soldiers, prompting Israeli airstrikes in retaliation. However, Hamas denied any involvement, saying they had no contact with Rafah since March 2025, a position also acknowledged by US officials. Moving on to the second ceasefire story, Qatar and Turkey were able to mediate between Pakistan and the Afghan Taliban. In the last 24 hours, Pakistan's Defense Minister Khawaja Asif has been very active, making statements and giving interviews. He is trying to ensure that the ceasefire holds between Pakistan and the Afghan Taliban. This is a critical development because the success or failure of this ceasefire could directly impact Pakistan's internal politics, especially the question of Mr. Sohail Afridi's role in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. Now looking at the broader international stage, the political and military leaders involved, including the United States President Donald Trump, have expressed sincere interest in resolving conflicts, including in Afghanistan and Pakistan. However, Israel's Prime Minister Netanyahu seems more focused on securing political victories domestically, with little interest in long-term peace efforts. Donald Trump, on the other hand, is genuinely committed to peace, especially in the Middle East, as it would help shape his legacy. But even he faces challenges, as he cannot force Netanyahu to make compromises, and the situation in the United States itself, with internal politics and other international crises, limits his ability to act decisively. In this complex web of international diplomacy, the key players are Qatar, Turkey, and Saudi Arabia, with only Qatar and Turkey genuinely committed to achieving peace. These countries have played key roles in facilitating ceasefires between Pakistan and the Afghan Taliban, and they will likely be central to the resolution of the ongoing situation. Thus, the question of whether Sohail Afridi will succeed in his efforts for peace in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and Pakistan-Afghanistan relations depends on a complex array of factors, including the international dynamics and the influence of powerful domestic forces in Pakistan. This brings us back to the important issue at hand, whether the United States, Israel, and other international players can align their interests in a way that supports lasting peace in the region. The answer, as always, remains uncertain. He also issued a statement from his office regarding this ceasefire, referring to what happened in Doha, where he himself was participating. He spoke about good things. Apart from this, Khwaja Sahib gave at least 3 or 4 rapid-fire interviews. One of these was on a Pakistani television channel, and he was likely on his favorite program on JOTV, perhaps with Sahibzada Khanzada. He might have been there as well. In addition, he gave an interview to Al Jazeera Arabic, followed by another interview with Arab News. He gave one more interview. The gist of all these interviews is that the agreement that took place in Doha, which Khwaja Sahib didn't show anyone, is something we only know about from comments by the Pakistani government or from comments by Zabihullah Mujahid. No one has seen that agreement, at least I haven't seen it. They say that the fundamental thing in that agreement is that no more attacks or incursions from Afghanistan will occur. If there are any such incursions, then this ceasefire will not hold. Now, don't misunderstand from the structure of my words or the choice of words in Khwaja Sahib's statements, which have been printed in newspapers, that he is not saying Afghanistan will not attack us. What he means is that every attack by the TTP, Khwaja Asif, the Defense Minister of Pakistan, considers to be an incursion by Afghanistan into Pakistan. He believes that every attack by the TTP inside Pakistan is, in reality, the responsibility of the Afghan Taliban. What is the assumption? The assumption, or the conjecture on which his entire argument is based, is what I told you earlier. Every argument is like a tabletop, and beneath it, its legs are its assumptions. So, the legs of this argument are that all the violence inside Pakistan by TTP, the Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan, could only be possible because the Afghan Taliban provides them logistical and structural support. They inspire them and allow them to plan attacks on Pakistan. If the Afghan Taliban were not helping them, then TTP would not be able to carry out such attacks inside Pakistan. Now, I don't know how many of you understand this, but there's certainly no shortage of fools in Pakistan. The biggest achievement of Pakistan's state in the last 77 years is that every year they manage to make their people even more foolish. Fine, a little progress was made when Imran Khan tried. Maybe 10, 15 or 20% of people have started thinking. Their minds are illuminated and they are beginning to see things more clearly. But despite that, I still see that fools are not in short supply in Pakistan. These are the same people who, every few months, are easily fooled by some national security narrative. There are even those among them who, I'm sure, aren't being paid to do so or aren't employed by anyone. They are not working for anyone, not for Chaudhry Nizamuddin. But their brains just don't seem to get it. These are the people who have forgotten that the Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan, or TTP, is Pakistan's internal problem. Yes, their leadership might be based in Afghanistan, and yes, they get some support, assistance and endorsement from there. But the issue itself is tied to the internal history, structural and political problems of Pakistan's tribal regions, such as the former FATA areas, the tribal conventions, our serious administrative management issues, and the presence of our army. This requires a political solution, which the Afghan Taliban may not have. They may not even have 60% of it. They can help, but the real expectation in this is what Khwaja Asif has clarified in his statements. The expectation is that we put enough pressure on the Afghan Taliban, telling them that we will break their country into pieces. We will destroy their cities. And remember, the Afghan Taliban, as a guerrilla force, is different from the type of guerrilla warfare they fought against America. Running a state, managing cities, infrastructure, transport, communication, hospitals, and government buildings is a different thing altogether. When you run a state, like the Afghan Taliban are now, compared to a powerful enemy with air power or an army, your strength becomes vulnerable, very weak. Many people make the second mistake. Yes, there are those who foolishly think that the TTP is in Afghanistan, but that's not the case. Another foolishness is when people think the Afghan Taliban are brave, strong, and will uphold their conventions. They believe that the Afghan Taliban can handle everything, but the Afghan Taliban are in a very vulnerable situation right now. They are not the same guerrilla force they used to be hiding in the mountains or moving around as they did against America. Now, they are running cities, and against Pakistan's air force and drones, they are very vulnerable. So, the message here is that unless the Afghan Taliban use their tribal and cultural influence and relationships to rein in the TTP, the ceasefire will not hold. Now, what can the Afghan Taliban do in this? They can certainly help Pakistan. Just like Turkey and Qatar have provided a platform for civil discussions and negotiations between Afghanistan and Pakistan, the Afghan Taliban can use their cultural, tribal and historical influence over the TTP to sit down behind the scenes with the Pakistani military and the TTP for negotiations to resolve their issues, step by step. Of course, they would need will, capacity and vision, all of which are currently completely absent. But what is the response? In every interview, Khwaja Asif has clarified that the talks in Doha do not, in any way, mean that we will have any negotiations or dialogue with the TTP. What we have said is simply that further attacks from the TTP will not happen. This is a grey area where, unfortunately, I do not see sustainable success or peace. Despite having invented fancy terms like TTP and BLA, referring to them in different ways, and calling them fitna or Kaji, the term Kaji was most likely coined by the military intelligence or legal departments. If you look at Muslim history, the term Kaji was used repeatedly in the 7th and 8th centuries in relation to political resistance movements. The Kajis were political dissidents, who rejected any compromise with the established political order, like the Umayyads, even resorting to violence. Now, regarding the issues within Pakistan's system, there is a severe lack of conflict resolution. Pakistan's military, bureaucratic and police systems are very different when it comes to dealing with conflicts. The police, whether in Punjab, KPK or Sindh, believe in conflict resolution and mediation, and they do not want to escalate conflicts further. However, the military mindset, especially the officers under Chaudhary Nizamuddin, lacks any understanding of conflict resolution. These people do not have the capacity or will to resolve conflicts. A perfect example is how they have handled the Kashmir issue over the years, constantly repeating that it is a disputed matter under UN resolutions, even resorting to violence there. The TTP issue, meanwhile, is not being resolved. The BLA, Lal Masjid, and even Imran Khan's incarceration are all unresolved conflicts, which the system is completely incapable of addressing. A small, yet interesting example involves Mahalka Samdani in the US, running an organization called the Community Alliance for Peace and Justice. Many might know her, and her activism for justice, human rights and rule of law is a continuation of the legacy of her father, Justice Samdani, who took a principled stand against General Zia-ul-Haq. Unfortunately, her work has recently faced transnational repression. The National Cybercrime Agency in Pakistan has sent her a notice threatening confiscation of her property unless she appears before them, just because of her growing international connections. These are examples of how the system in Pakistan lacks any real capacity for conflict resolution. Despite the political will, there is no real understanding or capacity within the state to resolve conflicts. Now we look at the new Chief Minister of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, Sohail Afridi, who has made bold decisions that are moving in the right direction. He has said that in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, the police will not arrest anyone under MPO 3 for maintenance of public order, and there will be no political FIRs. He also emphasized police reform, stating that they must be sensitive to the complaints of the people. He is right to say that the militancy and terrorism in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa are a direct result of the failures of the federal government's policies and flawed decision-making. I fully agree with him. Anyone with common sense will see that the situation in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa is the direct responsibility of the decision-makers in Rawalpindi and Islamabad. No one else is to blame. He also mentioned his upcoming meeting with the Corps Commander of Peshawar, General Syed Umar Ahmed Bukhari, regarding military operations. But whether Bukhari can fully understand the concerns of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa is another issue. If he is from Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and familiar with the local culture, he will understand the issues better. But if he is from Punjab, he might not fully grasp the situation. Finally, from a broader historical perspective, if you place an army from outside a region with officers who do not understand the language or culture of that region, it creates serious problems. The situation in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa right now is a result of this disconnect, and only by acknowledging this can we hope to address the issues effectively. That wraps up our translation of Moeed Pirzada's video. I hope this English version helped you understand his message better. Please like, share, and subscribe to Awami Lens to help our community grow. Don't forget to leave a comment below and let me know what you thought of this effort.